So welcome to the show, Charlene. So nice to have you.
Thank you so much. It's so nice to be here. I feel really honored to be one of your guests, and thank you.
Thank you. And I feel honored to have you. So before we get started on all the amazing information you're going to share with the audience, I wanted you to share your story because I think there's a lot of significance to your story and what events took place in your life to direct you to become a primal health coach. I think that
Mm.
many people can resonate with the steps that brought you there.
Thank you for asking. Yes. So I am a lawyer by trade. I always wanted to be a lawyer. It was one of those things that I wanted to do when I grew up, as far back as I can remember as a little girl, I wanted to be a lawyer. But I did it and I burnt out quite severely. I collapsed mentally, psychologically, emotionally, physically. Um, I was working at a very prestigious law firm and I was having a very prestigious career. And on paper, it looked fantastic. But spiritually and emotionally, it left me with a big hole in my heart. And, I was running on sleepless night and one or few many coffees, too many coffees, and not enough fresh air and poor nutrition choices because I was eating on the go. But I didn't realize it until it was too late. And I don't blame anyone. I don't think it was, anyone's fault other than my excitement and my my passion too, because I actually loved what I did. And I wasn't reasonable in the sense of putting loving boundaries. You see, I could have, should have stopped working at weekends or gone to bed at midnight, but I didn't do that. And it really pushed me against the wall at a point. I burned the candles at both ends. And it wasn't just me. I also saw my loved ones go through big life events. My dad had a stroke and a cardiac arrest due to career driven stress as well. He was my role model, and it was very shocking for me to see him so unwell. So I thought, what is the point of accumulating all that wealth if I am going to spend the rest of my life trying to fix it? And that got me on a journey. I went on a quest. It was a bit of a hero's journey. I would say that was the point of the call to adventure, just wanting to go abroad and travel the world and actually experience and be curious and learn from different culture and gather pearls of wisdoms along the way. It brought me to India, to the Himalayas, to Nepal, to Indonesia, to Sedona. I went everywhere I could, in search for answers.
That's amazing. I think so many people can really relate to that, because we're trained, especially as driven women, to, the more we do, the better we get, and the more we master our positions, the more we'll have to offer other people. But unfortunately, it's at the sacrifice of balance and connection and looking, internally at ourselves. And at the end of the day, if we're not healthy ourselves, we're not going to be able to be those people that we want to be for everyone else. So it really comes back to, putting the oxygen on yourself and taking care of yourself so that every interaction can be meaningful. So that's amazing. That's kind of a dream of mine. I'm a little envious that you've gotten to do all of that traveling everywhere. And how did you do that as far as
Oh,
like, how did you decide, how were you able to connect with the people of those areas as opposed to just go
mhm.
on a vacation or a holiday?
Right. Oh, wow. That's such a great question. It's actually the first time I've been asked this. So I love this question. Thank you. I was driven by a quest for answers. So I looked for wellness community. for instance, when I decided to go to India, is because I discovered an ashram there, a Hare Krishna ashram, and I was really driven by the motivation to learn the art of meditation from authentic yogis and authentic monks. So that was the reason I went there in that specific place. When I went to Indonesia, I went there because there was a particular yogic school that was giving a course that I wanted to attend to become a fully qualified yoga and meditation teacher. When I went to Sedona, it was to practice sound healing. When I went to the US, I did some coaching qualification. When I went, so everywhere I went, there was a purpose and a community. I also spent some time in Ibiza because I wanted to explore tantric communities and learn about tantra. So it was very much me and my suitcases,
Mm-hmm.
um, with an open mind, a backpack, a suitcase, and a carry-on, a lot of books, and really an open mind and an open heart. It was probably a little risky, if not reckless, at times. I will admit that my family was concerned sometimes, but I'm happy to report I was blessed. I remember little anecdotal stories, particularly going to India. My friends and my family were very concerned about my health, of not falling sick, because I'm a street food lover. I love to eat really local food. I'm not a big fan of
Same with
tourist.
me. I drive to the side of the road and I said, "What is this? How do I eat it?" And I just put it in my mouth. I know.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
And I was fine. I really am a firm believer in really putting your mind to it. See, every time I ate, I sort of practiced a little incantation or a little mantra that it was going to be nourishing, and I had
Mm-hmm.
faith in it. And I was fine. Same in Kathmandu and Nepal.
Wow.
I actually met extraordinary people, and it was a very, very beautiful adventures. Of course, there were tough times too, and time I had to be more careful. But overall, I learned so much.
It's true. I think, you kind of nailed it when you said you came from a place of curiosity and wonder. And I think if you approach every day that way,
Mm.
it changes the entire experience, and that may be tied into your tantric living, which I do want to get into, but I want to start first with, like, now you're a primal health coach. Can you explain exactly what that is and what primal fitness and nutrition is for the audience?
Yes, absolutely. I'd be delighted to. So, primal health is really about mimicking our ancestors, going back to how we became the humans that we are today. There is so much talk about, the future and technology, and yes, we absolutely need to be looking forward and to be future driven. However, we are the way we are now because our ancestors followed a certain blueprint by way of living. They were moving, they were active, they were pushing, pulling, fishing, hunting. They were following natural circadian rhythm because they woke up with the sun and they went to bed when the moon rose. And somehow along the way, as we became the modern men and women that we are today, we lost some of those very precious pearls of wisdom that our ancestor knew. And I was very much guilty of that. When I was working as a lawyer in the office, I would spend days at end under AC, indoors, perhaps not seeing sunlight, in a room temperatured office, wearing shoes, wearing high heels, not looking after my arches, eating prepped meals. And it disconnects us with our natural habitat, which is nature. So primal health is actually incredible, simple, but not always easy. You see that it's simple, but not easy to implement in the modern world.
Mm-hmm.
It's about having whole food that connects us to the source, which is nature. It's about having whole night, which are in dark and aligned with circadian rhythm. So trying not to stay up too late or not to use artificial lights. and I make a particular effort to use dim light or to use blue blockers or to use candlelight at night, because I'm trying to be conscious of all the artificial light that I'm being exposed to. So it's little adjustment that you can make to really mimic what our ancestors did.
So, what does a day in the life look like for someone who's following that primal lifestyle? And let's not put it in maybe the urban environment, because that would probably be more difficult if you're living in London or New York City to be grounding, right? And then obviously if you're living on a farm, it's really easy, right? So how about somewhere in the middle, like in
Right.
suburbia?
Okay.
Like how would someone's day look like, and how could they incorporate it into also accomplishing everything that they need to do in the modern society? Like what kind of little tweaks and pearls can you
Yeah.
give everyone?
That's a really great question. So first thing, we're going to start by the feet, I suppose. I'll show you actually.
I'll
Don't
show you my
worry.
feet right here. Here you go.
Ah, there you go. You're barefoot. That's perfect.
Always.
So if we want to adapt to urban living, I'm wearing five finger toes. So
Okay.
I'm wearing barefoot shoes, which means there is no sole. There is well, there is a tiny little sole, but it mimics being barefoot, and you don't get arrested for being mad because you can actually walk around in the city of London with this.
So you like the Vibram five
Yeah,
finger.
those are the
Okay.
ones. Yes, I
Okay.
wear
Okay.
those all the time. I wear them with my cutest little dresses, just
Those are cute. They're like a burgundy color for those of you that
I
can't
have them
see.
in burgundy, lavender, baby pink, blue. I've
Okay.
got the colors of the rainbows, and also they're super nice because they're easily washable and they're travel friendly. Being a nomad, I've been wearing them all the time. And when I was living in Bali, it was also very convenient because sometimes you can get cut when you're walking on the sand
Mm-hmm.
with coral reefs. So they're really fab in that
Okay.
sense.
Now, are
So
you able to ground with those on, or or they just allow your foot to have use its natural arch and musculature without the support?
it's more about the natural arches. Theoretically, you can ground, but nothing replaces just being barefoot, of course.
Okay.
For me, it's more about not having collapsed arches or not hurting my toes as I did for many years when I was wearing high heels all day long. I was wearing stilettos in the office, going to court in stilettos, and I had really bad looking feet a few years ago, and I'm glad to say that they look a lot healthier now, and they feel a lot healthier too.
And that's good to know that it's not too late, that people can start at any time and reap the
It's
rewards.
it's not too late, and there
Yeah.
are so many exercises that you can do as well with balls and with tennis balls, and to help with collapse arches, and also through strengthening the toes and doing toes exercise to really increase the mobility of the toes. We don't think about our toes often enough, and often when I work with clients on yoga and meditation and consciousness, I really bring the attention to every single one of the little toes, every single toes of the feet. And it's funny how people sometimes realize that they can't actually move the little toe if they think about it. Maybe
Yeah,
now
I'm
someone in the
trying right
audience is
now.
going to try.
I know I'm trying right now. I'm thinking, what's amazing to me is if the feet are healthy, like your back problems might go away, or your hip problem might go away, or your knee problem might go away because of that alignment that we're dependent on. So,
Absolutely. So that I think that would be a really great starting point.
okay.
And it's across gender. It's for male and female. It really is completely unisex. You can wear those as a man or as a woman.
And that's for going
And
out. But if you're home, are you a pro of being barefoot or still
oh,
wearing?
as much as I can.
Okay.
I really I wear shoes if I absolutely have to, but I'm
Okay.
notorious for being shoeless. This is a running joke in my friends and family. It's just like, I, yes, I'm shoeless most of the time.
Better to be
uh,
shoeless than shirtless.
yes, exactly. So that I'm known for. I'm also known for eating with my fingers.
Let's
because I really like that primal aspect of food, and I know it's not always socially acceptable, of course, when you're dining out, but when I carve out my meat and I cut it out and I eat the bones, I chew the bones and I eat with my finger, and for me it's a very primal ritual, and I feel very connected as well to, you know, the animals life that we're celebrating through that meal. And it's very primal, it's very visceral, and it makes me feel really good.
so
And
let's talk about that. So you're eating the bones, and I've heard you be called the bone collector.
yes.
Which I think is funny. So how, and I'm looking at your teeth and they're beautiful because my first thought would be like, oh, you're going to chip a tooth, right? And so
um,
you actually chew the bones and eat the bones, or you
yeah,
just suck
yeah.
out the bone marrow?
I do both. So if they're baby bones, small bones, so for fish, like small fish, blue
Mhm.
fishes, I could eat everything.
Of
If
course.
it's chicken, of course, you have to be careful unless you have made a bone broth, in which case I can also put everything in a blender once the bone broth has been cooked for a few hours in my slow cooker. Then I blend it all, and it gives that really thick texture. But if it's beef, I'll chew as much as I can, and then any leftover, I'll just make it into a broth. And I've actually found that my teeth are particularly healthy. You know, when I go to the dentist, they always say, you know, that they're really, really healthy. So the gums, we are meant to chew. Actually, one of the most unhealthy thing that we can do as human is not chew. And there's been a lot of studies done about the jaw formation and the quality of the teeth. And as a civilization and as a culture, it's part of our devolution to actually get bad teeth because we stopped on chewing food. We're meant to tear meat apart, and we're meant to chew. And if we look at our pets, if we look at carnivore, if we look at animals, they chew, they know how to do it. You know, it's something that we are wired to do, and we've been lazy. You would hardly ever see me drink a smoothie. I don't believe in it. I don't judge anyone who does it, but I don't really blend my food because I'm not a baby. I don't need to blend. I like to chew.
I feel like I found my soul sister because everyone is always trying to convince me to do these cleanses with smoothies and these juice cleanses, and I say I like to chew. I really enjoy chewing. So okay, but now I'm motivated to chew more, and I understand all the Weston A. Price, like the foundation and all of
Yes.
his work with, just the fact that we're mouth breathers and our airways aren't even open up, and we have so many issues,
Mm.
and it really stems from not chewing.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
that's a really great point. Okay, so I'm still going back to the day in the life. Okay, so you
Yes, I'm
wake up,
sorry. We took a
that's okay. You
detour.
wake up, you're barefoot, and then like, what
Mhm.
does a breakfast look like in primal living?
No breakfast.
No,
So the first thing that I would do after the waking up and the stretching is I would breathe and I would stretch like an animal. I really believe in stretching, like
mm-hmm,
a cat would stretch. I make sure that I expose my largest skin section to a bit of sunlight so that I can awaken. The worst thing that we can do is expect to awake us to feel awake when we don't get sunlight. I can appreciate that in big cities, sometimes in London too, I struggle to get sun ray, but I really try to get exposure. If I don't have direct sunlight, I'll do a bit of red light therapy to just make sure that my skin gets that little boost. And I stay in a fasted state, and I go and I move. So I usually do a slow or low bearing impact form of exercise, such as a long walk. I really like to have my 10,000 steps walk in nature in the morning before I eat. I have water. I do have black coffee. I'm French, so you know. I do like my black coffee. I sometimes make it with mushroom or make it with MCT oil. It depends on what I feel like. I also sometimes put peptides in my coffee, collagen peptides
mm-hmm.
from beef. But I definitely don't eat because I like that, you know, that waiting. I like my feast when I come back from my walk, and I don't feel the need to eat when I wake up. Otherwise, I feel just it's a bit too much. I'm a 1 meal a day to 2 meal a day person. I'm a really firm advocate on OMAD, 1 meal a day, and sometimes 2 meals a day. And I also really love intermittent fasting. So for me, it's a primal ritual to be fasting and feasting, as our ancestors did when they were
Yes.
going out on a hunt. We overeat way too much. I
Mhm.
used to be a little squirrel snacker. I was grazing all the time when I was in the office. Um, and sugar calls on sugar. So you enter this very vicious loop, right? Where you go and get your coffee Kit Kat fix. I was guilty of that, most definitely. And then next thing you know, you crave another thing and you crave another thing. And this was just not something that was serving me. And it was so far removed from the way I was brought up as well. My mom is very earthy, very primal. She cooks organ meats and cooks just very wholesome food. But of course, living in a city, in a corporate job, I did as my peers did. And also, I don't like to use this word, but it's the truth. It was convenient. It was
Yeah.
out of
Convenience.
convenience.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's true. It's not that easy to bring your ox heart and kidneys and and liver as a lunch when you're working as a lawyer. You're kind
Right.
of, sorry, go ahead with your sandwich. I'm here eating my liver. See you later.
I know. I think that's really coming to the forefront, though, as far as the awareness of organ meat. And I haven't incorporated it yet. I want
Mm.
to. There's a few reasons, and I think they might be barriers for other people that might be listening as well. Like,
Mhm.
number one, how do you source it? Where do you even go? I don't even see it at the store. And so, where do I look for it? Obviously, I want it to be grass fed or pasture raised and properly raised, um,
Mhm.
and humanely, taken care of. And then also, how do you prepare it properly so that it
Mhm.
is edible? And I've heard you mention like mincing it and mixing it in, but I don't really like ground products. So, what
Mhm.
are some other ways that people can prepare it or or cook it to make it seem palatable or to take it to work where people don't it's not obvious that that's what you're eating, right?
Yeah, such a great question. So I'll answer it in turns. The first, in terms of sourcing, the best is to go as close to the source as possible. So if you're friend with local hunters or local fishermen, that's your ideal source. The next best thing would be local farmers markets. So if you know any local original farms, any a local farmer that breeds their animal, they will definitely know about the offals and the organ because they most likely keep them for themselves. Then after that comes your butcher and your local fish shop, and they'll probably be able to keep those for you. So you could ask them for the chicken feet because often they're thrown away, and you can make a wonderful broth with the feet, and it will be very rich in collagen. And I know how passionate you are about skin health, and it's a wonderful hack for the skin because
Mm-hmm.
it's so nutrient dense. Likewise, liver contains a lot of vitamin A, which is also wonderful for skin. I was suffering from cystic acne when I was working as a lawyer, and I would use quite a lot of makeup to cover it up. And it was really not only unpleasant look wise, but also slightly uncomfortable at times because it was around the jawline. And I really blame it on my nutrition, along with the lack of fresh air, of course, and stress.
Cortisol, yeah, cortisol for sure.
Absolutely,
Mm-hmm.
yes. But ever since I went back to this primal diet, I find that my skin really is so much healthier, and it's noticeable when you go in the sun because you actually burn a lot less. Your skin naturally has more oil and more collagen, so it's more naturally sun resistant, which is the way it should be because a bit of sun is wonderful.
It's so true. That's such a huge point because um, certain foods will impart certain protective things
Mhm.
in our skin, whether they're polyphenols or phytonutrients from like a lycopene rich diet or, high phytonutrient rich diets. But also, I mean, if you think about vegetable oils, your skin is just not going to react very well to the sun compared to having a diet rich in very healthy fats and healthy oils. It's going to have a
Mhm.
very different reaction. And I don't think people realize like what you put in your body affects the way your body is basically built, because we're remodeling all the time our body, and then the
Mhm.
way that we react from the sun. So it's not as simple as just putting sunscreen on. Like I do wear sunscreen on my face and my neck and my hands, the high real estate areas, but I don't on the rest of me, and I don't have any sunburn. And
Mm.
that's because I have a very high protective diet. And what
Mm.
you said is just so spot on as far as protecting your skin. And it's amazing how our bodies will just heal themselves if we support it naturally. Like your
Mm.
skin completely changed with your decrease in stress and cortisol levels, and having a more primal diet, you know and doing all of the things rather
Absolutely.
than giving a medication to you, right?
Oh goodness, yes. And our ancestors said like for like. So I eat a lot of tendons and all the connective tissues of the animal because they make my skin better too. And our skin is our largest organ. So it really goes to show, sometimes people think, oh, the skin is the one that is just aesthetic and it's all about looks and it's vanity. No, your skin is a huge flag and you really need to listen and you need
Mhm.
to pay very close attention because it's your body trying to cry out loud for attention. So I know that when I had cystic acne, I was not paying attention to my body and my body was trying to cry and send a message, but I wasn't listening.
Yeah, I
It
was
was just putting
screaming.
more foundation. It was probably making it all worse.
Well, we're really good
Um,
at covering things up, aren't we?
yes, literally.
Literally. Oh my God. Okay, I'm so motivated because I'm such a muscle meat eater. And I really, even last night when we were cooking the elk, and the elk was, hunted by a friend of mine, and
Oh.
and butchered with love. I mean, on the spot, and just very, very good hunter. And there was, the fascia area, and I said, I'm not going to eat that.
Mhm.
It's too chewy. And I'm so picky because I'm just raised in that textural kind of way. But the more you talk, the more I realize, why am I missing out on all of these healthy components of the
Mhm.
animal, and it's not serving me well? And it honors the animal to eat all of the components as well.
Yeah, and you can eat the blood too. And it's funny because when we talk about blood, everyone thinks about their steak and thinks the juice that comes
Yeah.
out. That's not blood. That's
No.
that's well, there is a bit of blood, but it's steak juice. The blood is really viscous. And in France, we make blood cakes. Cakes. It's not a cake, but we make um, blood really delicious food items made out of blood, and you can ask your butcher, and it's
Wow.
incredibly rich in iron. And when we look at some societies around the world and tribal communities, we found that actually the blood was given to either women that were expecting or breastfeeding or the elderly or anyone that had been injured because it's one of the most nutrient dense thing that could be given. So blood is precious.
That's
um,
really amazing. Wow. I bet it's easier to source in, you're in France right now, or when you're in England, it's probably easier to source in Europe. In the United States, we don't even have butchers hardly anymore. But I think if we go
mm,
to maybe the grocery counter or Whole Foods and ask behind the counter where they do butcher the meat, it's
yes.
hard to track, yeah, where it's coming from sometimes here.
And if it's too much of a stretch as well for our listener, there are organ meats that are not quite as potent taste wise. So, for instance, the heart is actually a lot closer taste wise to a steak. It is very different, but it is closer than the liver. So I would say don't go from your filet mignon to your liver. It might be a bit of a jump for your
Okay.
palate. But if you go, okay, I'm gonna have a steak and then I'm gonna have the heart, which is still a muscle. That's why it's quite similar in taste. And then you get used to that, and then you slowly move your way up to the liver or the kidneys, and then you can eat the thymus, which is really delicious, and then you can eat the brains. um,
And
uh,
do you like saute it in ghee, or how do you cook these
yes,
things?
so heart, I slice it or dice it and I make it with garlic and onion, and it's ready when you see the juice coming up. So it really has this pinkish color inside, and you want it to be a little bit pink inside. if you don't want to do it that way, you can also put it in the slow cooker. So in my butcher in England, I get the whole lamb heart and I throw the heart in the slow cooker for about an hour with a dash of water, a bit of natural salt. And then when you open it, it's fascinating because you can really see the inside of the heart, you know? And it's excellent. It's really, really healthy.
Okay, so do you typically recommend people eat only meat? Are you more of a carnivore diet, or do you have it with vegetables, or what's your stance on the primal living aspect of a whole food
Yeah.
diet?
Yeah, so I don't really believe in vegetables. I know this is probably a bit unusual, but they don't serve me very well. And that's not to say that I don't let my clients have them if they, don't get any bloating or reaction. But I am slightly starch intolerant, I've realized, and not just the starches, also certain vegetables make me react. So I don't digest spinach or kale or any of the green leaves very well. And now that I come to think about it, most of my clients, when I look at their food journal, their reaction, because I track reaction and what they eat, I often notice that green vegetables do give them reaction, indigestion, bloating, gas. So I've cut them out. I do still have some sweet potatoes, so more root vegetables. I do have a little bit of mushrooms sometimes if they're local and in season, but I'm mostly carnivore and fruits. So I wouldn't call myself carnivore because I do eat fruits. I would call myself animal-based diet. So my diet is 85%, 80% animal flesh, and perhaps 15 to 20% fruits and certain root vegetables and animal fats as well, and water.
Okay. And obviously, that's going to vary by individual based on their diary and what affects them and what foods make you feel good. So, for anyone
Yes.
listening, there's no absolute recommendations here. It all
Oh
comes back to
no.
what intuitively feels good for you. And I know, like, I've had patients in the past that have been on kale. They've had a lot of kale, and they've had a lot of juice cleanses loaded with kale juice, and the high oxalic acid was causing so many problems for them, even to the point where like the vulva was nodular and tender.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes it can cause joint pain and all sorts of other things that you don't really relate to your diet. So
Yes, I've
yeah.
had clients thrive from removing kale as well in their diet. Really, again, not being attached to.
Yeah.
I'm not attached to any labels. And one thing I would say is I'm not. I don't think that giving blanket advice is really applicable because we're all genetically different. And my
Yes.
favorite thing to do, and I think a really good practice, is actually to send anyone that goes to see a professional to get a genes test, to get a food testing, to look at how they best digest food, to do food stamp, stool sample, and also blood markers, and to give a personalized approach to nutrition because everyone has different ways of digesting. I know that I digest fat really, really well and I thrive on a high fat diet. But that's not the case for everyone. I've had clients where I've had to actually make sure that their fat macros was way reduced compared to mine because I had to look at their genes test. So we have to be very careful not to. I believe in not making blanket statement. There are things that I think are fair to say and are applicable to all humans. I don't think that vegetable oils serve anyone.
Or
Um,
sugar.
I don't think sugar serves anyone. I don't think processed food serves anyone. But when it comes to the finer distinction within the category of whole natural food, it really depends. And also where you live in the world, right? I recently went to a trip in Lapland and I was talking to people that had been living there and for many, many years. And they were saying, during winter, there is hardly any fruits or vegetables. They have a little bit of berries, a little bit of mushrooms, but mostly they eat meat
Mhm.
and fish, cold fish. And that's not to say that if you go to another very different country with very different climate, it would be a very different diet. So it
Exactly.
also depends on your actual reality and your environment.
I think that's such a great point. Yeah, that's a really great point because we see these trends out there over the last year, many, many years. There's always the hottest diet and people follow them. And when their friends are succeeding on those plans and they're not, you think there's something wrong with you. And it's not. Like, always go back within your body and check in and see what feels right for you and what doesn't feel right for you, because
Mm.
we all have our own blueprint, and we have to follow our own blueprint and honor ourselves. Okay, so can you expand on these pillars of your program that are directly linked? I like how you phrase it. They're directly linked to air, water, earth, spirit, and fire. Can you expand on that just a
Mhm.
little bit?
Yes, of course. So the air aspect is fundamental in terms of the breathing, right? We often think of air as, one of the fundamental elements, but often when I start working with my clients and I ask them how they breathe and I do a breath work evaluation, it always makes them giggles because breathing is the thing we do the most and the thing we think of the least often, unless you have been actively practicing conscious breathing, because we do it automatically. We don't really think about it, and it can make such a tremendous amount of difference. Conscious breathing, belly breathing can help activate our parasympathetic nervous system, and it's that instant tool. Although I don't believe in quick fixes, this is actually instant. You can instantly activate your parasympathetic nervous system by doing a round of belly breathing. And that's wonderful because if I'm working with very busy, high performing executive, they don't have a yoga mat in their backpack or in their suitcase, but they're always breathing. So if they learn the tool and they make it theirs, they can breathe on demand. It's the Netflix of wellness.
So what's a quick, like, I know there's so many different types of
Mhm.
breathing, and you've discussed in previous podcasts the fire breathing.
Oh,
It's the
yes.
yeah,
Breath of
yeah,
fire.
thank you. The breath of fire, which I think I've done in which yoga practice does that? Kundalini, right?
Oh, yes, Kundalini.
Yes. It's really effortful. It's very effortful.
Mm.
And Qigong breathing is also very effortful and it actually can bring on some visions, which I thought was very
Yes,
interesting. I did that at 40 years of Zen. And and I said I was keeping it up once a week and I haven't done it because it is effortful. But if
it
someone's like
is.
in a business meeting or in traffic or kind of having a moment, what should they what breath what type of breath should they go to in that moment? What's your recommendation?
So a very quick one, super simple and easy to remember. It's called physiological sigh, and it goes really simple. It's a double inhale and an exhale. So it's two double inhale, quite sharp, and an exhale. So it goes
In through the nose, out through the mouth.
exactly. And if you do
In,
it, you
out.
can,
I'll do
yes,
it
you
with
can do
you.
it 3 times if you want.
Okay.
Let's do it 3 times together.
Oh, that feels good.
Doesn't it just?
It feels good. Yes.
How quick, right? I
I got a
love.
little tear in my eye.
Oh, bless you. How nice. A neuroscientist called Andrew Oberman, I'm a huge fan, really talks about this physiological sigh and how useful it is to do that. And what's interesting to note is that babies do it naturally when they're sobbing. They do
Oh, yes,
this,
they do.
right?
Oh, yes. Oh, because
They
they like hold
do.
their breath when they're crying and then they go,
Yeah,
oh,
exactly.
oh.
Yeah, so it's hardwired. It's within our biology. We are meant to do this to soothe ourselves, but
Mm.
we've de-learned it, so to speak. So it's about bringing it back and relearning it. And if there is just one very simple breathwork tool or technique to remember, it will be that one. And next time you see your baby soap, you can maybe do the same.
Right. Okay, so that's the air as far as the five pillars. Let's talk about water.
Yes, water is relating really to also the feminine flow, and it has a particular place in my heart because of the water fasting practice that I like to do. I really like connecting to the moon, and on a new moon, I really like to go and have a fast. Whereas on the on the full moon, I'll have more of a feast attitude. I've learned in the past few years to really connect to the moon calendar. I didn't used to. I frankly didn't look outside my window much when I was a lawyer. But now I know exactly which day of the moon cycle we are. And ever since I took notice, my menstrual cycle has started to really align with the moon as well. And I have my little moon rituals, and I feel so much more connected to my feminine energy. And it applies to men too. I always encourage my male client to also connect to the moon, because it doesn't have to be gender specific. There is no reason. Fishermen know the moon for a reason, because the strides and because of water. So the moon has such a beautiful effect on us. And as woo woo as it may sound, there is science in it. So
Hmm.
reconnecting to the moon energy and adopting rituals that are connected to the moon is really nice. So if our audience wanted to start a mini fast, and of course you need to check with your medical and your doctors that fasting is a safe practice. But if you wanted to do an intermittent fast, 12 hours or 24 hours or 48 hours, I would really encourage that you start the fast on the new moon. And fasting on the full moon is not ideal. On full moon, it's better to have a little bit of a feast instead. So
That's
this is
amazing. Yeah, I mean, the power of the moon is very strong, and that's where the word
Mm,
lunatic comes from, right?
it
From
is.
the moon. So it does affect our behavior, and we can. What you're saying is we can utilize the power of the moon to kind of enhance our wellness.
We
And
can.
yeah, and what about the cycle, the menstrual cycle, cycling with the moon? Because I have heard that before, that in an ideal scenario, when you're detached from modern society, women do cycle with the moon.
Yes, absolutely. So you will either find women that tend to have their period on the full moon or a few days after, or on the new moon. And that's when you're really in sync with the lunar cycle.
Okay, so
Most
if somebody starts doing primal living, they may notice a shift in their menstrual cycle as they become more aligned with nature.
Absolutely. I've noticed it, and I've seen a lot of my clients notice it as well. And when it comes to mood, it's not just women, it's both men and women that are affected by the moon. And I know it may sound funny, but working with as a life coach, I deal with people's emotion. And on each full moon, I know exactly which full moon it is. I always give myself 3 hours of emergency appointment, because I know I'm going to have a busy day. I'm going to get a text. I'm going to have a message for pick me up. I'm going to have a pick me up text. I mean, a little, someone is not feeling really well or needs extra TLC or needs extra support. And they're my busiest day, full moon.
Why is that? Do you think it's just the things that are lying below the surface that we're kind of pushing down and all month come out during that period of time, or do we even know?
I'm not sure. I don't know that I know, but
Hmm.
I've noticed it.
I have
I've
too.
noticed.
Yeah.
I've
I
really noticed it.
I know when I was in clinic, my nurse would always say, "Oh, it must be a full moon," because the behavior of people we knew for years would change. And
Uh-huh.
I didn't realize it until she had brought it to my attention. And I know there's definitely something to it. It would be nice to know why, because, well, then we could biohack it, right? Because we try to biohack everything. That's what humans try to do.
Yes, absolutely. But knowing it is, to me,
The
it's a form of
awareness.
power, that awareness, knowing the
Mhm.
day. Because if you see that you have a little tension arise or a little emotion, or you feel a little triggered or a little bit more sensitive, and you know it is the full moon, it's nice to actually reflect on that and have that little ritual, and maybe plan for, a little TLC that day, plan for a massage, plan for a really gentle practice. I like to plan for my osteopath appointment on that day, or if I have a massage that I know I'm going to have, I love to have regular massages, I'm going to plan it. that day or the day after, because I usually have a busy coaching day. So I'm gonna, have a little treat for myself. If you know it, I think you can work with it instead of working against it.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. And it will pass. It's not permanent.
Yes.
Yes, until next month. Okay, so then we have air, water,
And the
earth.
earth, yes, so
Yes.
that really ties into that primal energy, that earthy living, and also this idea that you can and you are a nature lover, and absolutely in love with your natural habitat, and eat animals and eat really primally. This idea that you have to choose is actually really not aligned with the way we evolved. We've co-evolved with the animal kingdom, and we've always been intertwined as species. So I love animals very much.
Mm-hmm.
I have birds that I've raised in my garden, and they were born with me, and I've always been an animal lover. But I also really love eating animals, and I think you can do it with grace, and you can do it beautifully, and you can do
With
it
gratitude.
consciously with
Yeah.
gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So it's really that idea of the connectedness and the wholeness, and this embracing of our shadows as well. The hunter within us, even the killer. Which I know is not a pretty word to use, but we all are hunters. We all have that energy within us, and it's about embracing that darker aspect of our shadow, which actually makes us wholesome in a way. So that's really the earth element. And the fire is that the passion, that tantric energy, that drive, that ecstasy, and ecstasy with life, with our senses, with checking in to all those beautiful things that we can see, being in awe and being curious. When I say ecstasy, a lot of people can either connect it with substances or sex, which is actually, just a, a society deformation of the word ecstasy. Ecstasy is bliss, is joyful. I
Mm-hmm.
feel ecstatic when I'm under the sun and I'm dancing, or I feel ecstatic when I listen to the sound of the waves in the ocean. Ecstasy doesn't have to be associated with taking something, or having a sexual intercourse, but we've given it an interpretation that is in my opinion a little bit distorted.
Yeah, no, I agree. Even in the tantra, people think of sexuality as well, but what you're saying, it's really the sense of curiosity and wonder and just being in the moment and so happy and bliss at what you're doing and what you're feeling in all of your senses at the time, no matter what
Mhm.
it is.
Absolutely, you've said it
Okay.
so beautifully. And actually, tantra starts with the self. It's really about cultivating that sense of presence and that sense of stillness. One of the most powerful tantric practice that anyone could start today is to breathe consciously in stillness. And if they do have a partner and they want to expand the practice and they want to bring it to someone else, just doing eye gazing and syncing the breath lovingly, and doing that really deep eye gazing, it will give you goosebumps, and it will give you
Mhm.
the ecstasy that we're talking about, the sense of bliss and connectedness.
Right.
It,
Yeah, you
it,
can form even like a microcosmic orbit with really anything through your energy
yes.
senses, which is pretty, it goes back to that connectedness that you were discussing, which is pretty
Yes.
amazing, how connected it's the law of universal oneness. We're all connected, right?
We really are. We really
Yeah.
are.
It's beautiful. Oh, I love this. I could talk to you for hours. Okay, I know we're coming up on time, so I wanted to ask you just like one more, well, maybe two more things. So, how do you compare the mindset of a primal health coach to one of a biohacker? Like, it doesn't sound to me that tracking devices or something that you really, you know, promote, because it comes down to like let's reflect on yourself and how does this work for you on
Mm-hmm.
a knowing level, on an intuitive level, versus like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to track all this data, which I personally have a hard time with, because if I feel like I slept last night and my tracking device tells me I didn't, I will feel bad that day. I don't want to know. I just want to know how I feel, right?
That's a really, really great question. And I think there is room for combining them a little bit. So the way I like to think about it is primal health is my pillars, my stone. And biohacking is the tool that I use to come back to primal. What I mean by that is the reality is I don't live in a cave and I live in a modern world. So there are times where I use technology to bring me back to my primal health. So, if I give you a concrete example,
Yeah.
one of my favorite biohacking tools is blue blockers, right? They're very fancy blue or amber or red or yellow tinted glasses to protect me from the blue light. If I didn't use a computer, I wouldn't need those. But I do use my computer for work and I work with the US living in Europe. So sometimes I need to stay up past my circadian rhythm, past the sunset, which is not aligned with primal living because I should be going to bed when the sun goes down. So the way I can mimic primal living in a modern world is by trying my best to mimic nature. I put the blue blocking, I will use a red light panel. So I have one of those. And I do also track with my ring just to make sure that I can optimize my bedtime and adjust in small incremental amounts so that I can, adapt my modern life to the primal blueprint. Is really the way I look at it. And there are many biohacks that are actual primal aligned. So fasting is a biohack and it's
Yeah.
completely aligned with the primal blueprint. Ice bathing as well, it's a biohack, but it's just going back to nature and going back to being uncomfortable with the natural conditions.
Hmm. I think
And
that's an important point. Like, it's okay to be hot, it's okay to be cold. Like, let's
yes.
thrive in it because our body needs that dimensionality. Um, yeah, I just had a continuous glucose monitor on for 2 weeks
Mm,
because I noticed sometimes I just didn't feel good after I ate, right? And I couldn't quite figure it out. And so, going back to what you said, using the two in combination, it was really, really helpful for me because besides the obvious of oats, definitely spike my glucose to 200. There were like
mm,
sweet potatoes, even eaten with broccoli and some beef, would still cause a huge spike for me. And
mm,
then it would I'd secrete insulin, my blood sugar would drop, and I'd get hungry right after. So
mm,
it helped kind of tweak the few things that I needed to do in order to have more even sugar levels all day and even energy levels and feel really mentally clear as well. So I see what you're saying with the same thing with tweaking your, what you're doing so that you can optimize your sleep and combine the two worlds. Okay. I think I see what
and
you're saying.
it's useful for my clients too because the reality is I'm not always there, right?
Mhm.
Whereas it's easy for me to download data from their devices. They can send me a screenshot, they can send me a report, so I can actually have a look at the data and really track progress. If
Yeah.
everything was based on journaling, it could be harder to track. So I found biohacking tool really useful in terms of accountability, measuring and trackability, and really being able to report back on progress as well and setting goals that are really manageable and tangible and measurable.
Mhm. I think it also helps you know, like, "Oh, I know why I was feeling that way because my
Yes.
sugars were high. I don't have it on now, I'm not gonna have it on forever. I don't wanna ever use it as a crutch," which I think some of these devices, people do use it a little bit as a crutch, but it
Mm,
is to help you become more in tune to, like, what's actually going on in your body. So, yeah, it seems so important to work with a coach when you're going through this process until you can really
mm,
tweak all the areas in your life. Um,
absolutely. And
yeah,
it's about really letting the technology serve you and not enslave you.
yeah. Do
That's
you
where I
work with
draw the line.
right? Do you work with people online?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
As heartbreaking in a way as it is, because the reason I wanted to become a coach in the first place was because I love people, and now everyone is through Zoom. So
Right.
that is one downside, but then the amazing aspect of being able to do my program online is that I can serve people in jurisdiction all across the world. So, I have a lot of US based clients. I have clients in Singapore, in Ibiza, in Italy, in France, in the UK, and I couldn't serve all those beautiful clients if I was just working in one place. So
That's amazing. Okay, so is the best way I know your Instagram is very active, but your website is a great resource. So I'll have that in the show notes. Are those the two best ways for people to get in touch with you?
yes, absolutely. And if they want an ebook as well on breathwork and how to eat primally, I have free resources on my website as well.
Okay, great. And we'll have all of those links in the show notes. So, one other question that I ask all of my guests before I let you go is how do you define radiance, Charlene?
I define radiance in a way that your light or your glow is shining so bright that it impacts on other being around you, and you can actually share that light and see them glow too. For me, it's all about knowing that I have enough to shy upon other people and make their light brighter too, and it's about sharing it.
Thank you so much. It's so nice to meet you and have you on the show and see you through Zoom. I often don't meet people whose purpose aligns with their soul as clearly as yours does. So you're just emanating radiance through through the Zoom, and I'm just so grateful to connect with you from halfway around the earth. So thank you.
Likewise, it was beautiful. I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.